Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Jaded here with a ranged barbarian guide for you guys. Currently, this is the spec I'm using to farm with, to clear Act 1, Act 3, really wherever I want to go to just farm in the game. It's really become my favorite spec, and I think a lot of people don't think of weapon throw and some of these other skills in the build as serious skills to use. They're more just like fun skills to use every now and then, but I don't know, it's quickly becoming like my favorite build in the whole game. And so I just wanted to share my thoughts and opinions on it, give you some tips, some how to gear, how to, play the Barbarian as a ranged character, because you pretty much become a ranged character with this build. And in my opinion, it's the best ranged class in the game currently. I realize that might have some controversy with that statement, but it's just my opinion. I think it clears the fastest and is the safest, mostly due to Wrath of the Berserker, because no other range class really gets such a steroid as that skill. So it allows you to down champions and packs really, really fast. Another reason I really love this spec is it's so versatile. It's versatile in the fact that you can kill packs with it, you can kill normal, like white mobs with it, you can kill bosses with it pretty efficiently, although I will say other specs are going to be better for bosses, but it's no slouch in that department either. Like it does everything really well. I'm going to start off breaking down the gear that you need, because some people might think, yeah, this spec's great, but do I need, 200 mil worth of gear just to do it? And I will say this, I spent 30 mil on my DPS gear. I sold off all my tank gear. I no longer want to have anything to do with tanking in this game, because since the content nerfs and with PvP coming up, I really want to focus on becoming a DPS barb. And so I went out and spent about 30 to 40 mil on the entire on my entire gear. Now you could definitely get a very similar build for cheap. The belt I think is going to be the most expensive, and of course the weapons, how much are you willing to spend on your weapons? You can drop these down to like 700 DPS, and the price just plummets. So and you're still going to be efficient, but just not as efficient. First off, you want to find weapons with sockets, and ideally you want to find weapons with crit damage as well. Now if you can't find a cheap crit damage and a socket, just go for the crit damage. Don't worry about the socket, because if you want to go for the higher end gems for that crit damage, you're talking upwards of 20 mil for the 100% crit damage gem. So you can get 90 crit damage on a weapon, and it's equally as good as just having a socket. So that's what I did. I got this weapon for, I think it was like 6 mil at the time, and I think it's a very average weapon, but it has moderate DPS on it, and it gets the job done, and it gives me vitality, which a lot of my other gear is lacking. If you're looking for a cheap weapon, look for one with a little bit of vitality on it instead of strength. Those tend to be a little on the cheaper side. And my other weapon has some crit damage and a socket. These are going to be much more expensive. I found this particular one for 10 mil, but I think it's worth a bit more now. And ideally on both these weapons, you want to have lifesteal, and you want to have lifesteal on your belt, because even though lifesteal is nerfed in Inferno, as everyone knows, and everyone's avoiding lifesteal, because you do so much damage with all the crit damage and crit chance, you actually end up lifestealing quite a bit. And currently I don't have lifesteal on either of my weapons, but I know that in the future, if I upgrade, I definitely want to look for that lifesteal. Now I'm going to talk about the belt next, and I think this is probably the most important thing with this build, is finding a belt with 5 weapon throw fury reduction, because it's so essential to fury management, because you're really fury starved at times, and you really can't do this build without a belt like this. And I would not go for a 4 fury reduction belt. It's just not, since it's so core to the mechanics of how this build works, I 100% would go for the 5 fury reduction. Don't cheap out here, because it's really important. And if you can find it on this specific belt, this one has lifesteal, it has your strength, and it has 1 crit chance, which, you know, is whatever, but it has everything you need, and you can also get it with all resist, but those are upwards of 20 mil. I mean, last one I saw was 20 mil, and they're really rare. At the time I bought this belt, there was only 1 on the auction house. So, you know, you're gonna pay a pretty penny for something like this, but because of how essential it is to the build, you know, I really recommend it. And then the next piece I'm gonna talk about is the helmet. You know, Andara's Visage, everyone knows about this. It's still a really great helmet for this build. Since I don't have a lot of attack speed in general on any of my gear, I think this is one of the only sources of attack speed. I went ahead and opted for it. It's just cheap. I mean, you're looking at 1 mil to 2 mil, unless you want a socket, then you're looking at, you know, somewhere around 5 mil. And of course, all these prices I'm talking about can change, and they will change. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt, I guess, because a month from now, all these prices are either gonna go up or gonna go down. So just keep that in mind when I'm talking about gear prices. But yeah, I opted for Andara's Visage. Originally, I had a 170 strength version, you know, a high strength version without a socket, but I found that I was lacking too much in health, just too much in life. I mean, you want to sit at least at 20k, you know, that's like bare minimum 20k. You will die a lot, even with that much health. But then, you know, just kind of going over the rest of the gear. Of course, gloves, if you could find crit chance, crit damage, attack speed gloves, those are going to be ideal, but those are ridiculous in terms of price. So just get, you know, 2 stats, either crit chance, crit damage, or you know, replace one of those with attack speed and get some strength on there as well. But yeah, I mean, all the gear, you're looking at crit chance, crit damage. Those are your 2 main focuses, of course. And strength always before vitality. Only when you need more life should you look for gear with vitality. And I have, like, I don't know, not that many pieces with vitality. My gear is pretty garbage, I would say, in terms of like endgame content gear. You really need all resist on a lot of things to survive, and I just don't have that currently. But this was kind of a ground zero for me when I was building this, and I just wanted to buy whatever was on the auction house at the time for a decent price. And this is what I put together for, like I said, 30 to 40 mil. So another quick thing is movement speed really matters, but I would really only get it on your boots. You don't have to worry about getting it anywhere else. Since we're using sprint in the build, and I'll talk about that when we go over the skills, movement speed's not insanely important, but it will help you out, get from point A to point B, of course. And so I recommend getting either Sage Seekers or some nice rare boots with, you know, over 150 strength, somewhere around that range, some all resist. Yeah, you guys know all the good stats. Anyways, that's gonna do it for gear. All right, next I'm gonna go over all the skills within this build, and I really, you know, there are a lot of weapon throw style ranged barbarian builds out there, but I really feel like this is the best one. I've tooled around with a lot of different skills, you know, especially in place of sprint here, but I really just feel like this build encapsulates everything you need and is the best of everything. So starting off here, weapon throw with ricochet. This is giving you AoE, it's giving you slow, it's giving you your main damage output. Between this and sprint, those are your 2 damaging abilities. It's also you know, essential to manage your fury through these 2 skills. They really play with each other a lot, and you know, you're never using one or the other strictly. You're kind of always mixing in the damage of both of them if you can. And so, you know, the great part of weapon throw is, I'll just say a few pros of it and a few cons of it. So weapon throw is essentially just a ranged skill, but the cool part is the ricochet rune automatically targets anything near it. It targets 2 more mobs around you, or, you know, around where the target hits. And because of that specific property of this rune, things like Waller, which typically ranged hate Wallers because it blocks all your damage. But if you get close to the wall and throw, you can actually throw through the wall, and then it ricochets to the other mobs. So you're not really losing a lot of DPS in a lot of situations. Things like Waller don't stop you from you know, doing the damage you need. And another thing with this build is you can build completely glass cannon like I showed you with my gear, and you're still able to clear insanely fast and not die a whole lot. Of course, you will die if you have my gear. You do need more resist, you need more health to survive a lot of things, but you know, for the most part, weapon throw keeps you out of the fray of things and at a safe distance, unless you get caught out by, you know, jailer or you know, teleporting mobs, whatever. But for the most part, it's keeping you safe. And a few of the cons of weapon throw are, since you don't have a primary attack, you rely on having Fury to use any abilities. So, you know, that takes a lot of getting used to. And it's kind of uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable, I'll say, when you first start using something like this, because things like, I know this is gonna sound funny, but things like doors that you have to break, things like, you know, barrels or any, you know, environmental objects that you have to break, you kind of avoid, or I don't know, they just kind of become annoying because you have to spend your Fury to break stuff like that. But like I said, with the belt with the 5 Fury reduction, you're only spending 5 Fury per throw, and a lot of our skills help us feed that Fury back up quickly. Now, going over sprint here, this was a skill that I found to work in this build, you know, towards the end of creating this build, because originally I was using things like leap, charge, you know, other movement abilities, but I found that sprint is just such an amazing skill with Run Like the Wind. You know, I've done a few videos on Run Like the Wind before, and I always kind of thought of it as one of those joke abilities, but I'm quickly finding out it's kind of overpowered in a lot of ways. It just does massive AoE damage, and you know, at first glance you might not think that, but you can essentially get 4 of these tornadoes off that are stationary and just do constant DPS. And in an AoE, it's basically like having a whirlwind just sit there and work for you for, you know, 20 Fury for 4 of them. And through all of our other abilities, we're getting Fury quite often. So, you know, I like using sprint when I have to kite something, like 100% can't tank it. So, you know, anything with strong melee damage, you're just gonna run off the screen and that mob will follow you and run through all of your tornadoes using this skill. And also you can use weapon throw in conjunction to slow them, and they sit in those tornadoes for quite a while. This was kind of like unlocking the secret of this build, in my opinion, is using this skill in particular. And another great thing about this is it's really good for bosses. Like, you can get all 4 tornadoes, you can just circle around any boss, and unless they're highly mobile, like with the spider chick, she can run around a bit, but for the most part, you know, you're getting all 4 tornadoes on them constantly, and then you're able to spam your weapon throw crits, and it turns out to be pretty strong DPS on a boss fight. Alright, next we're gonna go over Wrath of Berserker. I mean, there's not much to say here. Everyone uses this on Barb now. Like, it's just overpowered. Like, it's insanely strong. It stops all CC. I think that's really the biggest thing here. It stops all CC, and it's giving you more crit chance, which is amazing for this build. And yeah, I mean, it's giving you a ton of burst to down champion packs. And where a lot of other ranged classes have difficulty with something, because take for example a Demon Hunter, right? When you're killing a champion pack and you run out of discipline, it's kind of game over. Especially if they're really fast, they jump on you, whatever, you're going to spill at some point. And so what Wrath of the Berserker does for a ranged class, you know, when using weapon throw as a barbarian, is it just allows so much burst damage that you don't hit that point. You know, using Ignore Pain as our sort of discipline style defensive ability, we only have 5 seconds, you know, of kind of God mode to handle this. So, you know, Wrath of Berserker is just amazing for downing packs, and I don't think there's really a reason to use the one that increases the duration, because you're losing that 100% damage, and that's pretty big. So I like Insanity, and I find it gives you everything you need, and you don't need like a long duration on the other rune. Next up, Ignore Pain. Really, this is just the best defensive ability for this build, and I really love the Lifesteal rune on it. There are a lot of mobs that will chunk you down to like no health at all, and this helps pick you back up and keep you safe if you ever get jailed, or walled in a really bad spot, because we don't have leap to get out. Another thing, Ignore Pain lets you take melee swings from things that would normally one-shot you, like Asmodan. Asmodan will one-shot you with a melee swing, and so Ignore Pain lets you get in there and tank that for a little bit. Battle Rage with Into the Fray, this is, you know, it's just essential to any Fury management build. It's giving you that Fury back that you desperately need with a build like this when you crit. So not only does it do that, but it gives you that 3% crit chance, gives you the 15% damage. You know, you want to keep this buff up all the time. It's really essential. And yeah, not much else to say but that. Up next, Warcry with Charge. I'd say this is one of the cons with this build, is you're not able to use your resistance rune because you really need that Fury burst. And if you go with the other resistance rune, you just don't have enough Fury to get what you need done. You know, I'd say experiment with it, but this 60 Fury is just so helpful. And because you need Fury to do anything with this build, it's actually really good. And you'll quickly learn after playing around with this build that it's really key to have that extra Fury. Going into passives, I believe these are all self-explanatory. Your crit chance, crit damage, you know, your crit chance. This is something I didn't really talk about with the gear, but you do want to have a main hand mace or axe for that 10% crit chance. There's no better, you know, weapon master bonus here. So you definitely want to pick up a mace or an axe for your main hand. And then No Escape. What No Escape does is when you use weapon throw, basically there's a chance for the crits to return 14 Fury. And since it's only costing you 5 with, you know, a belt that's reducing it to 5, it just gives you a lot of Fury to play with, and that's really, really good. I should go over the followers a bit. I use the Enchantress. I think she gives you the most bang for your buck. You can use the Scoundrel. He does give you that 3% crit. He can AoE slow everything, which is pretty useful. But the reason I use the Enchantress is just for the 15% armor buff. You know, if you do take damage, and you will at some point, it's good to have that armor buff. And on top of that, she also uses the debuff for more % damage. So it's great for things like bosses, things like Asmo, who stands there and sits in that. But the Scoundrel is really good too if you deck him out. You know, I would say give both a shot, but you know, followers are all personal preference, so you know, it's really up to you in that department. So I'm gonna go over a couple gameplay tactics that you guys can use in your, you know, figuring out this build if it's right for you, if you want to do something like it. So the cool part about this build is you should never get stuck on a pack. And the reason a lot of classes, you know, have to avoid a pack or get stuck on a pack, you know, for Demon Hunter, things like invulnerable minions, that's a real pain for them, because their projectiles can't get to the mob they want. But I haven't found that to be something that a barb has problems with, because of the way ricochet works on weapon throw, and because we can place you know, these damaging tornadoes on the ground as we kite. It just damages everything that runs through it, so we never run into that issue, which is really great. So you know, you can use weapon throw and bounce it off of invulnerable minions. Shielding is still a pain, but you know, again, you just kite it till the shield's gone, and then you go for it. Wrath of the Berserker usually lasts long enough for their shield to go down and for you to plow through it. Using this build and this gear in Act 1 is just insanely fast, clears. Sprint allows you to get to places a lot faster than other mobility skills. You know, you can really spam it. As you run through and damage stuff, you just keep going, man. You just keep going, and the damage it does to those mobs behind you, it feeds your Fury to do even more sprints. So your clears are actually really fast because of that mechanic. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, well, what if it drops something? I want to go see what it dropped. But in my experience, you know, it's all about clearing the packs. That's going to give you like the 100% chance to get your rares. And now with Act 3 being hotfixed, if you guys didn't know, Act 3 is hotfixed and it drops amazing loot now. You know, I'm getting item level 61 plus so often, and it's really filling up your bags quickly, that if you haven't checked out Act 3 again, I would strongly suggest it. You know, I was running through Act 3 with this, and while I did die a lot on things like the phase beasts, I really think the phase beasts need to be toned down. I think they just do too much damage. You know, I was able to clear it, and I did run into some issues with Azmodan. He is a bit trickier than I initially thought. Because of his melee damage, you have to really be careful not to take those melee swings. He one-shots me, so obviously having more DPS would help with bosses, because you just zerg them down and they die like in seconds. But my gear's not there yet, so you have to kind of play with the bosses a bit more, play with their mechanics a bit more, kind of kite around and do damage that way. But for the most part, I mean, Act 3 is still really easy, going from the beginning of the, you know, Heart of the Sin quest, and then working your way all the way up to Azmodan. If you ever run into a pack with reflect damage can give you a lot of trouble, especially with Ignore Pain down. But while Ignore Pain's up, you can, you know, go full out on any mob, even with reflect damage. And I have to imagine at some point, if I get lifesteal on both my weapons, it's gonna help that a lot. You know, reflect damage won't be so annoying. But yeah, I mean, that basically covers everything I wanted to talk about. If you guys have any questions about the build, leave them in the comments. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, wow, 30 mil for this build, I don't have that kind of money. But really it comes down to just finding great deals on the AH and getting the best that you can. I think you could still make this build work, even with, you know, 10 mil to spend. It's just gonna do a lot less damage. And currently unbuffed, my crit chance is at 48.5%, and my crit hit damage is at 422%. You can see my resists are absolutely trash, and I still get by with 20k life. That's something I'm looking to improve on as, you know, I up the value of this build and buy better gear. My pants are just really, really bad. I've been using them for the magic find essentially and the high strength. But yeah, I mean, this build has so much potential, and I feel like a lot of people aren't utilizing the throw weapon barb. So I just wanted to get this guide out there and see if you guys are using something similar and how you're doing with it, or if you have any recommendations for switching out skills, what you like to do with this build, etc., etc. Leave it all in the comments, guys. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. So check out my other videos. And I don't ask this very often, but because it helps me out a lot, if you guys like the videos, please subscribe. I'm really working towards getting up to the 5K mark. That's gonna help me a ton, you know, trying to get partnership and all that. But I won't bore you with the details. Thanks for watching, guys. Go out and have a great day. Go have fun with this build, and I'll see you next time.